Mark chapter 14, verses what? Mark 15, 1 through 25. Well, I guess it's gotta be it must be the Norton family blocking it, but yeah, what cat it? Okay, good for now. Jesus' trial before Pilate. Very early in the morning, the leading priests, the elders, and the teachers of religious law, the entire High Council, met to discuss their next step. They bound Jesus, led him away, and took him to Pilate, the Roman governor. Pilate asked Jesus, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus replied, "You have said it." Then the leading priests kept accusing him of many crimes. And Pilate asked him, "Aren't you going to answer them? What about all these charges they are bringing against you?" But Jesus said nothing, much to Pilate's surprise. Jesus is sentenced to death. Now it was the governor's custom each year during the Passover celebration to release one prisoner, anyone the people requested. One of the prisoners at that time was Barabbas, a revolutionary who had committed murder in an uprising. The crowd went to Pilate and asked him to release a prisoner as usual. Would you like me to release to you this King of the Jews? Pilate asked, for he realized by now that the leading priests had arrested Jesus out of envy. But at this point, the leading priests stirred up the crowd to demand the release of Barabbas instead of Jesus. Pilate asked them, "Then what should I do with this man you call the King of the Jews?" They shouted back, "Crucify him." "Why?" Pilate demanded. "What crime has he committed?" But the mob roared even louder, "Crucify him." So to pacify the crowd, Pilate released Barabbas to them. He ordered Jesus flogged with a lead-tipped whip, then turned him over to the Roman soldiers to be crucified. The soldiers mock Jesus. The soldiers took Jesus into the courtyard of the governor's headquarters, called the Praetorium, and called out the entire regiment. They dressed him in a purple robe, and they wove thorn branches into a crown and put it on his head. Then they saluted him and taunted, "Hail, King of the Jews!" And they struck him on the head with a reed stick, spit on him, and dropped to their knees in mock worship. When they were finally tired of mocking him, they took off the purple robe and put his own clothes on him again. Then they led him away to be crucified. The Crucifixion. A passerby named Simon, who was from Cyrene, was coming in from the countryside just then, and the soldiers forced him to carry Jesus' cross. Simon was the father of Alexander and Rufus, and they brought Jesus to a place called Golgotha, which means place of the skull. They offered him wine drugged with myrrh, but he refused it. Then the soldiers nailed him to the cross. They divided his clothes and threw dice. To decide who would get each piece. It was 9 o'clock in the morning when they crucified him. A sign announced the charge against him. It read, "The King of the Jews." Two revolutionaries were crucified with him, one on his right and one on his left. Following the story of Peter's denial, Mark turns back to Jesus and what happened at his trial. Pilate's wavering under pressure fits what is known of him from other sources. Very early in the morning, Roman trials usually began at dawn. It is not clear whether this was a second meeting of the entire High Council, Greek, the Sanhedrin, or whether the account refers back to the decision of the council in 14 and resumes at this point. Since the High Council lacked authority to institute capital punishment, they had to take Jesus to Pilate, the Roman governor of Judea from AD 26 to 36. Pilate's normal residence was on the coast of Caesarea, but he stayed in Jerusalem during Passover when Israel's celebration of the Exodus raised hopes of deliverance from Roman rule. The term King of the Jews is the Gentile equivalent of the Jewish title King of Israel. You have said it. Jesus' reply to Pilate's question is found in all four Gospels. Jesus clearly understood himself to be a king, and Pilate eventually crucified him on this charge, although Pilate understood that Jesus was not a political threat. The custom described in 15 is not known outside of the Gospels, but all four Gospels refer to it. In many instances, prisoners in the ancient world were released on special holidays. Barabbas, who had committed murder in an uprising. Pilate's willingness to release Barabbas probably indicates that he had not killed Roman citizens or soldiers. Pilate apparently hoped to release Jesus, but the crowd was stirred up beyond discussion. To pacify the crowd, to protect his job, Pilate ordered a completely innocent man to be crucified. He ordered Jesus flogged. Flogging was preliminary to crucifixion. It was done with leather thongs, tipped with metal, stone, or bone. This laceration of the flesh could itself bring death. Jesus' prediction in 10 was now being fulfilled. The crucifixion account is one of the most historically certain accounts of ancient history. Only the most naive would credit the early church with creating a story in which the object of their faith was crucified. For this story was and still is an offense to Jews and absurd nonsense to Gentiles. The entire regiment, literally cohort, 1/10 of a legion, was about 600 men. Those called out were probably all the soldiers currently on duty in the Praetorium. A purple robe, purple cloth made with an expensive dye, was worn by royalty and other wealthy individuals. 1 Maccabees. This robe may have been a centurion's out-of-service robe. King of the Jews, the formal charge of Jesus' conviction. After they left the walled city of Jerusalem, Jesus' strength apparently failed. The Roman soldiers forced Simon from Cyrene in northern Africa to carry Jesus' cross. Normally, a crucifixion victim was forced to carry the horizontal crossbeam, the patibulum, of his own cross to the place of execution. The vertical post, the staticulum, was sometimes left permanently in the ground as a warning and deterrent, like a hangman's scaffold in a public square. Simon was the father of Alexander and Rufus, who were probably known to Mark's readers. Golgotha in Aramaic, meaning place of the skull. In the Latin Vulgate, skull is Calvaria, Calvary. In Jesus' day, Golgotha lay outside the walled city of Jerusalem. When Herod Antipas later enlarged the city with the third wall, Golgotha was enclosed. Whether Jesus was offered a drink of wine drugged with myrrh in kindness or in mockery is uncertain. Jesus refused the drink, for he had committed himself to drinking the cup that God had given him. Myrrh has been used since before Jesus' time to treat wounds and infections and for digestive ailments. Crucifixion goes back to the Medes and Persians in the 600s BC. It spread to the eastern Mediterranean world in the 300s BC through Alexander the Great and became the dominant form of capital punishment in the Roman Empire until AD 337, when it was banned by Constantine. It was slow, shameful, and torturous. The victim sometimes lived for days, and crows and dogs would feed on the victims even before they died. A person could be fixed to the cross by ropes or, as with Jesus, by nails between the bones of the victim's wrists. To prevent premature death by asphyxiation, a footrest or a seat was often placed on the vertical beam. All 4 Gospels report that the soldiers divided his clothes among themselves. Mark records Jesus' crucifixion as occurring at the 3rd hour or 9 o'clock in the morning. John 19:14 gives the time as around the 6th hour or noon. These are rough estimates of time, and events in the later morning were typically described as occurring around either the 3rd or 6th hour. Why did the Jewish leaders send Jesus to Pilate, the Roman governor? The Romans had taken away the Jews' right to inflict capital punishment. So, in order for Jesus to be condemned to death, he had to be sentenced by a Roman leader. The Jewish leaders wanted Jesus executed on a cross, a method of death that they believed brought a curse from God. They hoped to persuade the people that Jesus was cursed, not blessed by God. The Jewish leaders had to fabricate new accusations against Jesus when they brought him before Pilate. The charge of blasphemy would mean nothing to the Roman governor. So they accused Jesus of three other crimes. One, encouraging the people to not pay their taxes to Rome. Two, claiming he was a king, the king of the Jews. And three, causing riots all over the countryside. Tax evasion, treason, and terrorism, all these would be cause for Pilate's concern. Why didn't Jesus answer Pilate's questions? It would have been futile to answer, and the time had come to give his life to save the world. Jesus had no reason to try to prolong the trial or save himself. He was the ultimate example of self-assurance and peace, which no ordinary criminal could imitate. Nothing would stop him from completing the work he had come to earth to do. Barabbas was arrested for his part in a rebellion against the Roman government, and although he had committed a murder, he may have been a hero among the Jews. The fiercely independent Jews hated to be ruled by pagan Romans. They hated paying taxes to support the despised government and its gods. Most of the Roman authorities who had to settle Jewish disputes hated the Jews in return. The time was ripe for rebellion. This crowd was most likely a group of people loyal to the Jewish leaders. But where were the disciples and the crowds who days earlier had shouted, "Praise God in the highest heaven"? Jesus' sympathizers were afraid of the Jewish leaders, so they went into hiding. Another possibility is that the multitude included many people who were in the Palm Sunday parade, but who turned against Jesus when they saw that he was not going to be an earthly conqueror and their deliverer from Rome. Crucifixion was the Roman penalty for rebellion. Only slaves or those who were not Roman citizens could be crucified. If Jesus died by crucifixion, he would die the death of a rebel and slave, not of the king he claimed to be. This is just what the Jewish religious leaders wanted, and the reason they whipped the mob into a frenzy. In addition, crucifixion would put the responsibility for killing Jesus on the Romans. The region of Judea where Pilate ruled as governor was little more than a hot and dusty outpost of the Roman Empire because Judea was so far from Rome. Pilate was given just a small army. His primary job was to keep the peace. We know from historical records that Pilate had already been warned about other uprisings in his region. Although he may have seen no guilt in Jesus and no reason to condemn him to death, Pilate wavered when the Jews in the crowd threatened to report him to Caesar. Such a report, accompanied by a riot, could cost him his position and hopes for advancement. The brutal guards, the power hungry governor, and the conniving religious leaders had the upper hand, but they did not know the true power and authority of this man they were torturing and had condemned to death. Worldly powers and philosophies that mock Jesus' lordship will not be so arrogant when Jesus returns in judgment. When you feel that unjust people who have control and viewpoints hostile to Christianity are carrying the day, rest assured that Jesus holds the highest place and will return in glory. Colonies of Jews existed outside Judea. Simon had made a Passover pilgrimage to Jerusalem all the way from Cyrene in North Africa. His sons, Alexander and Rufus, are mentioned here probably because they became well known in the early church. Throwing dice was a way of making a decision by chance. The soldiers gambled to decide who would receive Jesus' clothing. Roman soldiers had the right to take for themselves the clothing of those crucified. This act fulfilled the prophecy of Psalm 22:18. Crucifixion was a feared and shameful form of execution. The victim was forced to carry his cross along the longest possible route to the crucifixion site as a warning to bystanders. There were several shapes for crosses and several different methods of crucifixion. Jesus was nailed to the cross. Condemned men were sometimes tied to their crosses with ropes. In either case, death came by suffocation as the person lost strength, and the weight of the body made breathing more and more difficult.